guys, I'm Jen. Welcome to Decorate the Soul. Today I'm going to be talking about what I read in 2020. My friend Carla actually reached out to me and asked me like, what have you read? Like, I'm waiting to see a post, and I thought that's really easy to do because I'm a psycho who documents everything I read on Goodreads. I've read over 600 books, and that's like through my whole life because I'm a crazy person who's always kept a list. But before we dive into that, I want to brag about this blank NYC jacket I thrifted and I'm wearing because I thrifted it to resell, and I just wanted a reason to wear it because I have no life and it's going to go to someone who does have a life. But what's the point of having a YouTube channel if I can't wear things that I would not wear in my normal life? So let's begin. So according to Goodreads, I read 9,215 pages, which totaled to 29 books. And I broke them down into categories, so if you like one over the other, you can kind of just skip past it, or you can just like not listen and know not to waste your time because like, oh, I hate nonfiction. Like, you just move along. So the first section I broke it down to was children's books, and I read 2 of those this year. One was Coraline by Neil Gaiman, which I'm surprised I never read, never saw the movie. It's creepy, but it's kind of easy language to read in the verbiage of like Harry Potter. It's like maybe a Halloween read if you're looking for something like that, or if you're just looking for something like light, but very thought-provoking. The other book was The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse by Charlie Mackesy. Also, I have my laptop here because I'm trying to be sustainable and not write things down and waste them. But this book was gifted to me during quarantine. It's something I would recommend for you to get to friends who are new parents, who are looking for moments to share with their children, or a book to like their first book to read. It's just has lots of life lessons, short, like couple lines, drawings, very Winnie the Pooh-esque. But it's still good for adults. If someone's just, graduating, moving on with their life, something happened, they need like an uplift, whatever, I would recommend you getting that for them. The next category is nonfiction, and the first book of the year that I read that was nonfiction was Sins of the Brother, The Definitive Story of Ivan Milat and the Backpack Murderers by Mark Whitaker and Les Kennedy. I had to Google that because I didn't have that written down on my list. It is the true story of the backpack murderers in Australia that took place in the late 80s, early 90s, or just early 90s. But the story behind the Milat family, and did Ivan do it by himself? It's a really good read. It's actually really difficult to find. It was gifted to me by somebody who was in Australia, but if you can get your hands on one, yeah, I totally recommend it. I've heard that some of the movies and recreations and documentaries aren't as good, but this one was legit. I read Shit My Dad Says by Justin Halpern, just for laughs. Don't remember many of the stories, but sometimes a light read is a good read. Becoming by Michelle Obama, which I can't believe it took me so long to read. I have some personal reasons tied to the person who gave me the book, and that's why I think it took me so long to read. It was a really great autobiography. It was very honest and open and gave me insight into things that I don't think I would have had because I don't know anybody who's a politician or a politician's wife or a politician's spouse to like kind of get that like, oof. I am kind of a jerk in the way I judge people, so definitely eye-opening. It's Not Supposed to Be This Way, Finding Unexpected Strength When Disappointment Leaves You Shattered by Lisa TerKeurst. This was a book I specifically picked up because my best friend passed away, and I needed something to kind of ground me because I was spinning and looking for just something to deal with the grief, and it didn't really work. I mean, to be honest, it's a good book. I know some people who DM'd me while I was reading it that said that they really felt connected to it and that it really helped. It just didn't help me. It does have some like religious connections, so if you are Christian, I definitely recommend. It definitely ties in with some Bible verses and things like that to kind of connect you in that way, but I think because the author's grief had more to do with the dissolution of her marriage, I think I just needed something that was more about death. I know that sounds really like, I don't know. It was good. It was okay. I read The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up, The Japanese Art of Decluttering and Organizing by the one and only Marie Kondo because why not? And if I took a thing and put it around this room, you would realize I did not listen to anything I read in that book, and I never will. So, sorry, Marie, you're right, I'm wrong. I know it. I want to get more into psychology books. So I read The Marshmallow Test, Mastering Self-Control by Walter Mischel. Very interesting, lots of data, lots of tests to run through that they did and that he documented and that he talks about. But if you don't feel like getting into it, you don't have to read the book. You could just Google it, read the Wikipedia page, and I'll summarize it. It did help me understand I have no self-discipline, I want self-discipline, so help me understand why I don't have it, what I can do scientifically, like what's blocking me, what's not blocking me, and how I can kind of like trick my brain into doing it. But I kind of thought it was gonna be more of like, try these things instead of just like the data and like what they did. So it's kind of more for me to figure out and like, girl, just tell me what to do. The last nonfiction book I read was Golden Girls Forever, an unauthorized look behind the lanai by a saint, Jim Colucci, and he's a saint because I love the Golden Girls, and anything Golden Girls is amazing, and I did not get up off the couch like for 4 days while I read that thing, and I thought it was a coffee table book that my friend gave me, but yeah, it was so good. It's how I ended the year, and it was magnificent. If you're a Golden Girls fan, you must read it. The next genre I read would be short story collections, and I read 2 of those. One was Too Much Happiness by Alice Munro. Not gonna lie, I don't remember much of it. I like Alice Munro. She's deep, she's thought-provoking. Sometimes I have to like kind of reread some of the stories to figure out what I missed by the time I got to the end, and I think sometimes that's a work of intelligence. What I'm trying to do here also is I'm not going back and like researching and seeing what the stories were about. I think that it's really important when you read, like when you're recommending things, what stuck with you, and if a book doesn't stick with you, it doesn't stick with you, it means something. So not much stuck with me on this one, but Alice Munro is a legend, and all the stories have female like protagonists or leads. I do tend to read and like her stuff though. Pittsburgh Noir was the other short story collection, which was written by a bunch of different authors in the Pittsburgh area or writers from Pittsburgh, and it was edited by Kathleen George. It was good. If you like Pittsburgh, it's got some, you know, Pittsburgh stuff in there, not as much as I'd like. I wanted it to be more, to be honest. I think they have them in different cities, like, you know, Pittsburgh Noir, like New York Noir, probably. It's like a series, so maybe you can find one for the city that you live in. I read 2 trilogies. The first one was the To All the Boys I've Loved Before trilogy, which includes To All the Boys I've Loved Before, P.S. I Love You, Always and Forever Lara Jean by the amazing Jenny Han. I love her. I think she's gonna be one of those authors who I will consume everything that she writes until the end of time. If you haven't seen the movies, where are you? But the books are just as good. Force my mom to read them. I think I recommended them in my Cozy Christmas Reads book thing video. Still recommend them. The other trilogy I read was The Golden Compass by Philip Pullman, and that includes The Golden Compass, The Subtle Knife, and The Amber Spyglass, which it's a children's I wouldn't even call children's. I don't know. I think it's technically supposed to be like that. It's interesting because it came out around the same time as Harry Potter, and Harry Potter got so much backlash, especially from like religious organizations, whereas this one definitely should have. It's very overt in that, but it's kind of cool in the way that there's like multi-layer universes. I'm just gonna stop there because I don't want to go too far, but if you like mystery, if you like sci-fi, if you like Harry Potter, I think that this is a good holdover for that. I read 3 young adult like YA fiction books. To All the Boys fits in here too, but because that was part of trilogies, I put that into a different one. So in this one, the first one I read was All the Right Places by Jennifer Niven. It is a movie on Netflix. I haven't watched it yet. I will. I just haven't yet because it is definitely going to require me to be in the right emotional headspace for it, just because of the mental health topics that are in this book. I think it's really important. It's really vital. I think it was a really great way for me to look in through the eyes of someone who's suffering with mental illnesses, and simultaneously what we can do to help, but also knowing that it's up to us to get our own help and to reach for that help. I read Paper Towns by John Green. It was kind of a mystery in its own way. It wasn't just like, you know, young adult romance and fiction and teenagers in love and, you know, will they fall in love and then probably end up breaking up before college anyway. No, it definitely had a mystery aspect to it, and I kind of liked that I was allowed to play detective while I read. The last YA book I read was Will Grayson by John Green and David Levithan. Probably not saying that right, but I really like this one because I think it was cool that it was, while a lot of, you know, John Green books are written through the male narrator, there was 2 narrators who were both boys, and I thought it kind of was open. I don't know, it didn't feel like it was just for girls, and it definitely was like from a male experience, and it wasn't just like falling in love with a cute girl in class. It was cool. I think that they one guy wrote a chapter, the other guy wrote a chapter, he wrote a chapter, he wrote a chapter, and yeah, it definitely felt that way, at least with the different characters and the way they eventually intertwine. So this categorization I'm calling mystery/thriller, and the first one of the year I read was Murder on the Orient Express by Agatha Christie. Agatha Christie is the OG in terms of fiction crime. I don't know what you would call it, but she is OG. She's the queen. And I actually tend to not love some of her stuff. This one I felt like I needed to read because they've made so many movie adaptations about it. It's just like out there in the universe as like the one, and so I decided to read it, and it was better than I expected. If you don't know what it is, I don't want to accidentally put anything out there, but if you're interested in kind of like mysteries, but you don't want to do like the gross, detail, graphic kind of ones, this is a good one to start with. It's like a palate cleanser. One I would not recommend that is graphic was A Postman Always Rings Twice by James M. Cain. Good, quick read. It's a thin book, very graphic, very detailed, I don't want to say too much. I mean, I did not know what this book was going into it, but it's a classic, I think, for a reason. I'm just gonna leave it at that. I read The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle by Stuart Turton, like at the very start of quarantine, and I was so stoked to read it. I think it's a really great book to read like in winter when you really have nowhere else to go. It's set in, I think, Victorian times. It's a wild ride. It's a little sci-fi-y. It's definitely a mystery. Who done it, or why done it, or where done it, and I just love the concept. It's about the 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle. So yeah, I definitely would recommend that as a different one that's not super popular, that people don't really know about in terms of like, you know, Gone Girl or like all those other ones, except way less darker than Gone Girl. I don't know why I even just tried to compare it to Gone Girl, but not as dark. Lighter than that, but still dark. I also read Big Little Lies by Liane Moriarty this year, and I cannot believe it took me this long. If you've seen the show, that's awesome, but I have a feeling because I Wikipedia the show afterwards, the book's better. It just is. And I don't know if there's a sequel. I know that they wrote like a second season to the show, but if there's a sequel to this, I would 100% read it. The cool part is that like I kind of knew a little bit of it, like because I couldn't avoid, you know, in the past few years hearing about Big Little Lies, like what the ending was. So not the ending, but like some big, what are they called, like surprises later. And so I kind of knew of one, and while I was reading it was like cool to pick up as I was reading. So even if you kind of have like an idea of what Big Little Lies is about, you can still read it and still feel pleasantly surprised. And my last category is fiction. The very first book of the year that I read was Shop Girl by Steve Martin, and I don't remember it at all. And I remember where I was when I was reading it. I was sitting in the pool in my apartment building. I loved that pool and that float. Anyway, it's by Steve Martin, like the actor, and it's not that it's bad, it just felt like, it's just like an old dude who wants to have sex with a young girl, like, you know, and what she settles for, and I don't know, they made a movie out of it. Go watch the movie, I'm sure it's better than the book, because not recommended. White Oleander by Janet Fitch, however, is recommended. I loved the dynamic female relationships in this book and the adults that the main character encounters, specifically the female ones, because they define so much of what womanhood is to her. So it's a great read for March, because that's like Women's Month. How to Save a Life by Liz Fenton and Lisa Steinke. I don't know how to say her last name, but they're super sweet authors. They're two best friends who write books together, and I think that's freaking cool. I read a mystery book by them before, and this one's not so much mystery, it's much more lighthearted. It's Groundhog Day themed, literally, and the same day keeps kind of playing over and over and over again for this main character, and he's just figuring out how to play it just right to make everything work. I enjoyed it, and I also enjoyed that it's set in 2020, but like an alternate version of 2020, where 2020 that we lived through didn't occur, because they're like hanging out and doing things together in public in June, and I was like, I wish. I read Emma, a modern retelling by Alexander McCall Smith. I love Jane Austen. I love Emma. It's my favorite of all of them. If you like Clueless, then you like Emma, because Clueless is literally ripped from Emma and just put into like a modern 90s Valley Girl setting. So if you like that one, you will like it. Or if you like Clueless but you don't really want to dive into Jane Austen because you don't like the language and it's boring for you, Emma, a modern retelling is a good like segue to still get the story, still kind of get the characters. I think he uses the same names, like the original names, instead of like, you know, Clueless, her name was Emma, her name was Cher. So yeah, definitely recommend it if you want to kind of get to know Jane Austen but don't like that kind of writing. And the last book on my list is Breakfast of Champions by Kurt Vonnegut Jr. I wish everyone was forced to read this book. It is about misinformation and what it can do and what it leads people to believe and to think, and theories and thoughts and all these things. And I read it right before the election too, so very poignant. If there's one book on this list that you should take away with you, it's Breakfast of Champions. Breakfast of Champions. Kurt Vonnegut is just, he's good, man. So thank you for hanging out today and listening to me rattle off the 29 books, totaling 9,215 pages that I read. Humble brag. I'm gonna try to do more of these kind of themed like books, booktubes, whatever, book videos. So if you have any like recommended reading you'd like, maybe in a specific genre, a theme, whatever, like, again, I read over 600 books, so I could probably recommend something. All right, I will see you guys in the next one. Later. This has no collar.